Hello students, Miss Jen here with Chapter 6, Lesson 3. The war continues. We just watched that cool video on John Paul Jones and his defeat of the Serapis. We'll learn a little bit more about that when we get down to around here. There we go, the war at sea. But for now, let's start with the war in the West. So an often unspoken part of the Revolutionary War was the war in the West, but not like California West or Oregon or Utah or that far west. Back then, when we're talking west, we're talking like Illinois and Pennsylvania. That was the frontier, that was the west. And there were battles out that way. They weren't all centered around, say, Boston and New York and Savannah, Georgia, and places like that. The British had outposts out there. They had strong points out there in the wilderness. Remember, left over from like the French and Indian War. They also had allies in the Native American population. You say, but weren't they just fighting all the Indians like a few decades ago? True story, they were killing each other. But by the time the revolution breaks out and the natives think about it, they figure that the enemy of their enemy is their friend. And right now, the colonials, the colonists, are more of an enemy than the British because it's the colonials that keep pushing them off their homeland, not necessarily the British redcoats. And so as a result, a lot of the natives fight with the British against the colonists, particularly out west in the frontier where they live. It's said that Chief Joseph Brant attacked settlements off in the frontiers of Pennsylvania and New York, and that one British commander was actually paying the natives for the scalps of colonials. So kind of a jerk move there, British commander. What the heck? Now, to deal with this threat, Virginian George Rogers Clark built himself a colonial militia, and they went out to go fight the war in the West. They captured the British post of Kaskaskia and then the town of Vincennes out there. The British pushed back, retaking Vincennes, and then the colonials rallied and took it back again. And that was pretty much the war in the West. It was over. Good job, Virginian George Rogers Clark, for settling down the West for us. Pretty much that's the whole story of the frontier. Let's bump over to the war at sea. So the British had the most powerful navy in the world. They had the advantage of the sea for the entire war. They blockaded all American ports, and in an attempt to combat this blockade, the Congress ordered 13 warships. Hey, one for each colony. But only 2 ever made it out to sea. Most of the maritime operations of the colonies were conducted by privateers. What the heck is a privateer? It could best be described as a government-sanctioned pirate. It's a private ship, most likely belonged to a colonial patriot, and they outfitted their ship with weapons and they attacked British commerce ships. So they weren't like going head-to-head with warships. They were attacking shipping vessels, supply ships, things like that. One distinct naval hero that came out of the Revolution was John Paul Jones. He was the captain of an actual U.S. warship, the Baham Richard. He had been raiding British ports all the way over in Britain when finally he gets caught up. The British catch up to him. 23 September 1779. The British warship was the Serapis. Serapis kicked him around for a little while, but he managed to win the day. We watched the video. We talked about how it looked like the Baham Richard was going to be defeated, and they rallied and won the day. It was like one major naval victory for the colonies in the whole revolution. That was it, and they loved it. They ate it up. A thing I forgot to mention, these privateers, there were a lot of them. It said that Congress commissioned 2,000 privateers during the revolution. That'd be like 2,000 American pirate ships raiding British commerce. They probably put a little bit of a dent in that commerce for Britain. There's John Paul Jones screaming, "I've not yet begun to fight," at the Serapis over there, and this guy's like, what? Yeah, he's talking smack, 18th century style. Alright, let's talk about early British success in the South. So, the British were having a little bit of trouble up north. They thought they'd do better in the South because there were more loyalists in the South. So they focused there for a while, and they met with initial success, taking major cities like Charleston and Savannah. But they found that even though they kept winning the conventional battles, it was very dangerous territory to hold, and that was because Patriot forces, colonial forces in the area, were using what was called hit-and-run tactics. Basically, they would jump out of the swamp kill a bunch of people, blow stuff up, and then run away again. Whereas conventional tactics at the time was for them to all line up and shoot each other and not run away. So because basically the Patriots weren't playing by the rules, the British didn't even know how to react to it. Also, those hit-and-run guys, the Colonials, the Patriots, would snipe officers. They were shooting all the British officers, shooting the leaders. It's like taking the head off the snake. They won't know what to do without their officers. The most famous of these colonial leaders in the South was Francis Marion. They called him the Swamp Fox because him and his men would hop out of the swamp, kill a bunch of dudes, and then disappear like ghosts back into the swamp. You can kind of see it here in this picture. About to ruin this guy's day. Now, the tide turns. We mentioned Spain in a prior lesson. They declare war on Britain in 1779 and actually drive the British out of the Gulf of Mexico, and even at times supplied American forces, particularly in the western frontier. Not because they particularly cared for us, but they were allied with France, and France was at war with Spain. And they didn't like Britain. They were not good with Britain. So they helped us out a little bit. More like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and a friend of a friend kind of thing. More trouble for Britain arose with their questionable methods, particularly in the Carolinas. So North Carolina, South Carolina, basically a lot of the population had stayed neutral. And the British rolled around, bossed people around, threatening people, basically being mean to them. And as a result, a lot of those people that had stayed neutral began becoming sympathetic to the Patriot cause. Because the British were rolling around and telling them if they helped any Patriots, they would burn down their homes and kill them, and basically just being jerks. And so they ended up forming their own militia that had a significant impact at a battle in the South called the Battle of Kings Mountain. So basically, the British had stirred up patriotic support by being mean, shooting themselves in the own foot. Way to go, Britain. Now, things continued to go downhill in the South for the British. There's a new commander of Continental Army forces in the South by the name of Nathaniel Greene. Now, Greene split up his forces. He sent some of them to go fight with the Swamp Fox, the hit-and-run tactic style, and then a bunch of them went to a place called Cowpens where they soundly defeated the British. He then recombined his forces for a major battle against British General Cornwallis in present-day Greensboro, North Carolina. Nathaniel Greene and his Continental forces technically lost, but they inflicted heavy casualties on the British, so much that the British started moving north again. But George Washington caught wind of this, moved forces down to intercept them, and Cornwallis ended up taking a little detour and parking his army in Yorktown. That's pretty much where we're going to stop for the day. Cornwallis is in Yorktown. Greene's moving north. Washington is moving south. The waltz of war will continue, and we're entering the final phase of the Revolutionary War. We'll hit that up in the next lesson. For now, you have an assignment for the day. It's constructed response questions. Depending on which of my classes you're in, there may be more, there may be less. I will tell you this. Please use complete sentences when you're writing your answers. All the answers can be found in the lesson here. And remember to capitalize the first word in a sentence and put periods at the end of your sentences. That would be super swell. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a good one, okay?